What's up, movie lovers? I'm Steven from the Hills Maniacs, and today I'm going to be doing a brand new series of reviews on one of the most classic franchises of all time, the Rocky series, starting with the first Rocky movie. Now, the reason I'm doing this is basically because I wanted a new franchise to watch because I've been watching a lot of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and those kind of things with like superheroes and stuff like that. There are other franchises I watch, obviously, but I haven't really like sat down and like found something new to watch until recently when I watched the first and second Rocky movies. I wanted to see, what all the hype was about and everything else. I knew those were classic movies, or at least the first one is considered a classic. I don't know about all of them, but I haven't seen all of them yet, so that's kind of why I wanted to sort of go down the line and watch each of them, and then I figured I'd give my thoughts on them as well. So I'm kind of trying something new here. I'm not a huge fan of like sports movies necessarily and things of that nature, which obviously these movies are because they're about boxing. But when I saw this, I was kind of intrigued by like how they were going to tell this story, sort of. I thought there would be more boxing in this movie, so I was kind of surprised to see how they did this sort of like slow build of introducing who Rocky Balboa even is. He's just a normal dude living a normal life. Like occasionally he goes out for and does some boxing things in in the area and stuff just to make a quick buck, just to make whatever cash he can. He's living in a crummy apartment kind of thing and stuff like that, and he's basically just living his best life the way he can. He lives in Philadelphia and basically in the slums, I guess. And I guess that's my only really nitpick about this movie, is that it kind of takes almost a bit too long to sort of get to the point, I guess, because it doesn't even show us who Rocky is, like that he likes boxing and stuff right away. And eventually when it gets to that, that's when it kind of kickstarts the actual plot. But it takes a good probably 20 or 30 minutes just introducing us to this character that we know nothing about yet. He's just running around town. He keeps flirting with this local girl that works at a pet shop and stuff like that. He's just a normal guy. But even though it was slow building up to what would be the epic climax of this movie, I think it worked in the sense of like showing us who this character is, because not every movie protagonist has to be this like big fancy billionaire or some famous person. Like they can be a lowlife, really, that's a nobody almost, in a sense, that nobody really knows until they have this big moment in the movie, which is exactly what this movie is about. It's all about the underdog story sort of thing. And I like how it shows Rocky's life as this normal guy trying to live this normal life, and eventually builds up to him facing the champion Adonis Creed in a boxing match, which gets him some publicity and kind of sets up the next movie and everything else. I like the way that they did that, because I like to focus more on like the story aspect of movies nowadays rather than just the action and everything else. Like if I don't like how the story played out or something like that, then I don't really necessarily like the movie at all. So I don't look at it from that perspective. If you're just looking for a boxing movie, it is kind of boring in the first half of this movie, almost first 3/4 of the movie, until it actually gets to the point where he's facing Adonis Creed. But if you're looking for a good story where it's introducing you to this character and slowly building up to who this person is, and then it introduces us to the main antagonist of the movie like further in and stuff, when it shows both perspectives of this movie, that's when it really starts to get into motion. Like we learn early on who Rocky is because he's the main character of the movie, obviously, but we also get to see who Adonis Creed is, this big famous boxer that's the champion. He's undefeated. Nobody can touch him, really. Like he hasn't lost in a long time, and he's becoming greedy, essentially. Like when his next challenger backs out from the fight, he decides to challenge a local competitor to a fight, just a simple like grudge match for the title or whatever, just to have some publicity for himself, because he is selfish and he thinks it'll make him some money or make him look charitable, like, oh, he's a nice guy, he's giving this nobody a shot at his title and stuff like that. And it was all of this big publicity stunt conjured up by Adonis Creed. And I like that we got that side of it as well. Like, that shows us in like 5 minutes basically who his character is, this selfish, greedy man who doesn't really care about anybody else. He just cares about his own image as that famous champion boxer that he is. And to maintain that, he thinks this is the best option. Like, I'm just going to challenge some local nobody who won't even stand a chance against me. It'll just be this nice little fight or whatever, and we'll be done with it. And he doesn't realize what he's getting into by challenging Rocky Balboa. And it sets up both characters perfectly throughout the movie. It shows their how they are complete polar opposites of each other, where like Rocky is this caring guy who can't quite make it in the big leagues essentially yet, or hasn't made a name for himself that nobody really knows or pays attention to. They might think he's a bit slow and kind of make fun of him and stuff like that. And then you have Adonis Creed, who's the complete opposite of that, where everybody knows him and he's famous and popular, and that has gotten to his head. And I think it's a perfect counterbalance of both characters. Even though it takes too long to get to the main point, once it gets itself going is when the movie really picks up. When it starts showing the training montage for Rocky and for Adonis and the two different ways that they're both training for this fight that's going to happen, I think that's like the best parts of this movie, honestly, in my opinion. Because it shows Rocky is working really hard, he's working out, he's practicing his boxing as much as he can, he's doing all these painstaking things in order to get himself into shape for this fight, whereas Adonis Creed is just shown kind of sitting back and relaxing, like sort of not really giving a care about who Rocky is. Like, he doesn't think this guy's gonna do anything to him anyways, so he like doesn't care to train for this fight. He thinks it's just gonna be this 5-second contest and that's it. So he doesn't really feel that he needs to train for this. Like, yeah, it shows him doing some boxing and stuff or getting some practice in, but like he's doing it all nonchalantly and stuff like that, where he doesn't really care to put in the effort for it because he is underestimating who this guy Rocky Balboa is. He's underestimating him and thinks this is going to be an easy fight. And that's kind of where the problem lies for Adonis Creed, is that by underestimating him, he ultimately ends up getting embarrassed by Rocky in the ending fight. And I think that kind of makes it really realistic. Now, I don't know much about like boxing in real life, and I don't know if you can really challenge like a local competitor kind of thing like Adonis Creed does in this movie. But I think it's realistic in a sense that somebody like Adonis Creed would really feel selfish like that. Like, they would feel that, oh, this person means nothing to me, this fight means nothing to me, it's just to maintain my own image, and they would get greedy in that way. And I think that was portrayed perfectly in this movie, and it really showcases the differences between both the protagonist and antagonist, which is what you want out of a movie. You want to have your polar opposites are enemies of each other. Like, that's kind of how that works. That way, when the climax of the movie comes and they have whatever fight or battle that they're struggling with, and they end up clashing together, then that's what makes for a satisfying ending. Another thing I really liked about this too was that they didn't have Rocky win the fight against Adonis Creed. They didn't have him win the championship. They had him go to a time limit draw, and there's a set number of rounds, I guess, that they compete in boxing. I guess that's how it is in real life too. I think it's like 15 rounds or something. It might have been more, I don't really quite remember exactly, but it's just like, if you can go that whole 15 rounds without either one of them being knocked out or anything like that, then it ends in a draw, essentially. And I like that they did it that way instead of just having Rocky overcome Adonis Creed and win the title here, because then it perfectly sets up Rocky 2, where he does end up beating Adonis and win the title. But I think it also shows that Rocky's persistence, like, while he didn't win the fight, he did get in Adonis's head, which we see play out in Rocky 2, which I'll cover more when I actually review that. But we see that as his character is so caught up in himself that he doesn't expect someone like Rocky to be able to go the distance with him and survive that long without getting knocked out or without passing out or whatever, in the ring, and taking all the hits and the beatings and everything else that Adonis throws his way. and still surviving. And he doesn't see Rocky as that level of competitor until the end of this movie. And he even shouts at him like, there ain't gonna be a rematch, you know. Like he's annoyed that Rocky was able to survive that long. And I think that's a perfect character trait for someone like Adonis Creed, because he's so caught up in himself that he doesn't think Rocky can do that. And I think that works better than Rocky just having won the title, because in real life, you know, when you're struggling with something, you might not, you know, figure it out right away. It's a slow thing to try and persevere in whatever you're trying to accomplish, and it might take time. It's not always going to come right away. And I like that that's what this shows by having him tie with Adonis. It shows that he is able to take those hits and survive that long. And if they ever were to compete in the future, which we know they do in Rocky 2, that Rocky might be able to actually beat him this time around in their rematch. And I think that's what makes this movie so iconic, I guess, is not necessarily that he won the fight, but that he showed that he can do it, you know, that he can persevere even when everybody thinks he can't, that he is that type of person that will not give up until the very end and is willing to do whatever it takes to win. And that's kind of how we all need to be in life. And I think that's really what the main premise or theme of this movie really was, is that when you're trying to persevere in something in life, you don't give up and you just keep fighting. Even if it doesn't come to you right away, you still keep fighting until it does. And that's why this movie is so iconic, because of that. And that's a perfect way to not only cap off this movie, but also set up the sequel, where it's like, well, what happens next with this character? You know, is he going to become more famous from this? Which we kind of see that he does, because people are starting to want to recruit him and want him in these other fights and stuff like that now, because Rocky has gained publicity from this fight with Adonis Creed, even though he didn't win. And I like it when a movie does it that way, where it ends on a sort of cliffhanger, I guess, because it immediately, like as soon as the bell rings, pretty much this movie's over. Like after he calls out to Adrian, his girlfriend, to come see him, and she gets in the ring with him, and then it kind of just ends, you know. And it ends on that kind of cliffhanger where you're wondering what happens next. But even if there wasn't a sequel, it's a nice little movie about perseverance and stuff like that, where even though he didn't win, we still learn a lesson out of it. And I think it could stand alone as its own movie if they wanted it to be that. So I think it works both ways, where with that kind of ending. In my opinion, it's not like the best movie I've ever seen, but like for the story it was trying to tell, I think it did that really well. And I look forward to seeing all the other movies in the franchise as well. I have seen the second one as well, and I do plan on reviewing all of them when I watch them. But those were just my thoughts on the first Rocky movie. Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments section. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more. Like I said, I will be covering all of the Rocky movies sometime in the future. So if you're a fan of the Rocky franchise and you want to see my reviews and give your own opinions, then please keep an eye out for that as well, and subscribe to our channel so that you can get the update for whenever that video comes out. Thank you for watching this video, everyone, and I will see you in the next one.